So welcome back everybody. My name is Paul Smyers, and a lot of people know my videos. I've made a lot of videos about various subjects for the last 15 years or so. And I've explored a lot of really strange stuff, actually. I'm a very curious guy, so I started learning about a lot of esoteric things way back when I was around 20 years old in the 1970s. And ever since then I've read an awful lot of books, and now with the internet I've just done an incredible amount of research, listening to all kinds of subject matter. And all I can say is that the world that we live in, the existence that we have here, is just absolutely stunning and extraordinary. But the problem is that most of us live our lives, we don't really understand. We barely, I mean, even if you study your whole life about one subject or many subjects, I mean, let's face it, this universe is just incredibly vast, and we have a short time on here on this planet here. We try to cram in as much information, and then we end up having a lot of diverse views because naturally we all have our limits. And, you know, as we know, our physical senses are extremely limited, and a lot of various teachers over the centuries and the millennia have expressed this, say, well, look, you know, there's a lot more to this existence than you realize. And so we take those teachings and you pass it down, and we hope to practice all our life and have a little glimpse. So one of the things that we need clearly is we need to enhance our perception, because like I said, our perception, our little view of the world, whatever little window that we're seeing through, it's just very tiny. And unless we expand what we call ourself through various practices and try to learn and educate ourselves, we're not going to see the big view of what's really going on in this in our lifetime. And you know, a lot of religions come along and teachers come along and they express different views, and they say basically there's only one way. What is that one way? It's just to go from the outside to the inside. I mean, you know, on some fundamental level, we have to understand that maybe there is just one way in that sense, and not like a belief or the one ways that this particular person told you, you know, that particular book told you, but just that we have to take our attention from the outside to the inside. Because, why? Because that's where we come from. One time we were just a tiny little few cells, and we just kind of expanded, and here we are. And we have something inside us that's viewing outside us and looking outside. And we have these five senses. And this is not a new problem here, because there's thousands of years of testimony and various books have been written and teachers. And I'll quote in a few minutes here, one of the most popular of all time, and it's guaranteed to be at least 5,000 years old. And that's the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali from India. An extraordinary understanding of our attention. And let's face it, you know, we don't know how long we're going to live. We make a lot of assumptions. Every day we get up in the morning and say, well, you know, here I am again. I'm going to make our little schedule for tomorrow and the next day and the next day and make our plans. But who are we? This is the old question. Who are we? What are we? What are we? Well, again, the one way to understand that is to go from the outside to the inside, because there's an inner space. The senses can be quieted. For example, we know we can perceive without seeing. We just perceive other ways. We can perceive without our ears. We just perceive other ways. We close all our senses, even when we lay in the bed at night, and even if we're deaf or have earmuffs on or something, we're still awake. We're still perceptive. And then we slip away in the dream state, and then we perceive all kinds of things sometimes. But there are another state of consciousness, which many of the teachers have talked about for thousands of years, is to go to a restful place within, to just be our own being, being in a state of non-identity, non-duality, just existence. Not even a need to say I am, but because we just, as an absolute certainty we have in the consciousness, and we can just rest in that. And a lot of people have a problem because they think, well, this is like a very difficult process, and I got to go live up in the mountains, and I got to change my viewpoints and everything, and I got to do this and that, and do some strange things with my body and all that. It's not true. There's a lot of things that can help us in our life to go from outside to the inside, to clean up our body and train our mind and restrict some of our pleasures and so on, and just kind of make ourselves a little more disciplined. But ultimately, the goal is just to go and rest inside in a place where we meet the flowing beingness that doesn't have a name. It doesn't need a name. And we have to have that unity of consciousness, otherwise the human beings, we're always just going to argue and argue and argue and argue until the cows come home, or until their asteroid hits or something. We have to have a personal understanding of our existence, and that doesn't come from someone telling us, here such and such, or read this book. It comes from our own understanding, but that's our responsibility for we have to go inside and use our inner awareness as part of our perceptive. We can use all the senses, we can hear and listen and see and all these things and travel, but we also have to feel and see within and just rest. And like I said, the mind is not, it's not so difficult, because it's just a matter of putting something down that doesn't need to be, just like say, when you come in the door, you put your hat and shoes down, you take off your scarf, and you just put those things that you don't need anymore off to the side. In the same way, when we go inside, we just go, well, I don't need my schedule book, and I don't need all these other things and worries or whatever. I just put all those over things for the side for a minute and just let myself float, just like a feather floating down. Even a feather will just float down. Just let the mind settle down, because there's a beauty inside of just being still, that all our restless mind and things are going on just because we want to feel some beauty, we want to feel attracted, we want to feel connected, we want to feel anchored. But being anchored is nothing more than just letting ourselves relax and be who we really are. Because there's a dichotomy in terms of what we identify with. Let's say we have a horse and the rider of the horse. This body is our horse. We're the rider. We're supposed to not feel, oh, I'm the body, I'm this horse, and someone's always kicking me, and I have to do this and that for my body. He said, well, we have to identify with the rider does. Okay, I'm going to, take care of this horse, and I'm going to ride it carefully, and I'm going to manage it, and then I can get on and off the horse, so to speak. Lots and lots of people have had an experience of, leaving the body, but there's nowhere to go really, because really consciousness, there's no, in a sense, there's only the space. It's a very, very interesting concept to grasp. It's so simple, and it's just so simple. It's really almost the difference between looking in a mirror. We don't know what we are. We're stumbling around, and then we see a mirror. Oh, wow. Okay, now we understand. Or we just stumbling around. All of a sudden, a light goes on, even a small light, and go, now I can perceive in the 3 dimensions, and now I know more about my existence because I understand the context. That my perception starts from within and flows outward. When we were babies, we couldn't see very well, and things were going and confusing, and then just like a drop of water drops into, a drop of colored water drops into a tank of pure, clear water, slowly but surely then it'll just phase out, and after a while you hardly be able to tell that there was any color. Our awareness can slowly expand and expand as we come and take into, just like being in a room. We're sitting in a room and we perceive, we look around, and if we're just slow, we look around a little more carefully. We start to perceive the subtler things, titles of books. We start to feel the atmosphere, the various sensations that are going on around us in a very subtle way. So if we are what we are conscious of, then we need to expand our consciousness. And what I hope to do in discussing this is that there's thousands of techniques. We have to just use the techniques. There's many, many books and there's many, many discussions and so on going on. But we have to set ourselves and say, okay, I'm going to put some time for myself and then just not do all the other things. Because the questions that we ask, we have so many questions, people argue about different things. Well, if we all go inside a little more and touch in there and go in there and use our intuition, take in the information, don't have to accept all, but just listen to different things and digest it and process it through that deep awareness that we all have, then we can answer our own questions. We won't have to argue because we'll just have our own understandings. It's just real simple. So, I wanted to read you a couple quotes of this book here. This is an old book, and the author is Patanjali. And, I won't get into a long discussion of him, but you can look him up. Patanjali was a teacher, and they have definitely a record of him for at least 5,000 years in India, and people who practiced those techniques. And he wrote a very interesting book, and at the end of his life he said, well, this is what I've got, and I think it was 108 sutras. Means a stitch. It's a stitch of we're stitching our awareness into the infinite. Stitching, taking our limited awareness and enhancing it and binding ourselves or letting ourselves flow with the source of our own awareness, which is within. So one thing that he said was about, first of all, we need to calm our mind down. And how do we do that? The right control of the life current, or prana, is external, internal, or motionless. It's subject to place, time, and number, and also protracted or brief. And he goes on to talk about using the breathing as part of a process. The most fundamental thing that we have is our breath. If we just sit in, even if we just, like one of the greatest techniques, the simplest of all techniques, you drink a little water, decent amount of clean water, and just breathe a little bit slower in your life. Just breathe. Develop rhythmic and beautiful and slower breathing habits, and extend your life and makes you much less tired, and you probably eat less food as well. But he says the peace of the mind can be brought about through the practice of sympathy, tenderness, steadiness of purpose, dispassion in regard to pleasure or pain. So there's one part of the peace process is just disciplining ourselves and resonating with sympathy and kindness and being charitable and doing good acts and being helpful to people. It helps the mind just settle down. It's really simple. It's really not too much about morality and laws, or it's just a real practical thing. And the peace of mind is also can be brought about the regulation of the prana, or the life breath. Our breathing and all the motion in the cosmos, in a really deep place we can feel the motion of that. That is symbolized by our breathing. Our physical breathing is a representation of the cosmic breathing. So we understand that, and we kind of link our awareness and kind of become part of that. We already are part of it. Just let ourselves float like a feather. Now the mind can be trained to steadiness through those forms of concentration which have relation to the various sense perceptions. Being quiet, allowing our ears to perceive more subtle things. All ability to sense more subtlety is helpful to answer a lot of questions, because in that silent presence inside, it's like the universe will download into our awareness we're just becoming conscious of what's already existing. Like I said, there's the subtleties around us outside, and there's subtleties within. There eventuates a state of identity with and similarity to that which is realized. Basically, there comes a point when there's a oneness between our perception. When we sort of drop that I-ness, sort of, we don't need it. In a deep place, what are we defending deep inside? There's nothing to defend about I this, I that, I own this or that. There's nobody there to compete with, to argue with. And our own being, there's a oneness of just say, okay, I'm resting in my own being. There's no conflict here. So the universe is full of information. I mean, there's color information, there's sound information, there's all kinds of information that is at the root of this universe, of the manifested experience that we have here. Information in the form of electrical charges and temperature differentials and pressures and so on, all that's happening in a very subtle way, and through an inner perception we can start to get a glimpse of some of the inner workings of our existence, besides just our physical eyes and ears. And perception without judicial reasoning is arrived at when memory no longer holds control. The word and object are transcendent and only the idea is present. There's something he mentions called perception non-judicial, non-judging, non-reacting to what you perceive. If you want to know what's true, if you want to see what's real, we have to drop what we think is real. We have to get to a place of perception, like a mirror, where we're not trying to imagine or make something to perceive, or we're not going to react to bad or good or whatever, just perceive. This is not as difficult as it seems, because really it's our natural state. If you look at children, a lot of times the way they learn so fast, and many times a prodigy is very, very young, they just get stuff. Their perception is just like a flow. And in our adult mind, we get taught, we have to think. We have to just like mull over things and calculate and think about things. But in reality, all we have to do, there's a certain flow of information. I mean, there's this channeling, intuition, there's all kinds of different stages and phases and a manifestation of that tendency to just, download from the rain cloud of knowable things. That's another beautiful phrase. So, again, perception in this context of the political environment and any context in our life, our perception, what we're able to perceive, is absolutely, totally critical. We absolutely must take the responsibility of trying to enhance our perception in very, very subtle ways. Now, I've discussed things, and I'm going to try to give glimpses, because all I can do is say, look in this direction, try this and that thing, and explore for yourself. Because, I have had to try to answer a lot of my own questions, and my own personal teacher, who I've had for over 40 years, said the same thing. Just, you have to answer your own questions by going within. And, there's certain, basically, directions that we can be told, okay, go look in this direction, and, basically just let ourselves come to rest within our being. Don't be the horse with the rider on your back. Be the rider on the horse that's delicately managing the horse and this body. Take care of the body. And let our mind come to a complete stop. We have to get to a point of total dreaming perception, a relaxed state, to start to get a real glimpse of the subtleties. And there's many techniques we can practice. What I hope to do by teaching and showing people, look, try this and that, and this particular concept, look at something this way and that way, experiment, because, you know, I can't say what anybody's going to experience. You know, everybody's got, there's a, you know, infinite amount of experiences people can have in this existence. And, you know, there's just little keys. The key is just open that door. Again, the one way, you know, go from outside to the inside, right? If someone comes and teaches you, say, okay, here's how to go inside, then you have a connection, and then from then on, riding a bicycle. Okay, you're riding a bicycle, you get a little technique to, you know, you'll get a little bit of help, and, you know, here's how to do it, here's how to keep your balance. And then go on, you know, there's, people have dedicated their entire lives, there's yogis for thousands of years, all different kinds of shamans or whatever, people have tried to go inside. I'm going to go within. You don't have to go in a cave. But in this day and age that we're in here, I mean, there's so many distractions. And if we try to get all our information just from a television set and then think that's enough, it's not. And certainly the information we need most is how to manage our perception and expand our perception so that we live a clear life and we don't have to argue, because we both, everybody gets the same basically understanding, because, you know, we all get up in the morning and say that's the sun, and we agree, we don't have to fight. Okay, that's the sun, you know, everybody knows that. The moon. By having clear perception, you know, everybody gets awake a little bit. Everybody needs to, again, take a little bit of responsibility to become awake as much as possible. There's no end to it. I mean, where do you want to stop learning? It's kind of exciting. So, again, I make these videos, and I don't know, a lot is going on out there now. I've commented on a lot of different things, but basically it comes down to our own perception. Who are we? What are we doing here? And, you know, maybe if we stop fighting and just look into ourselves and go inside a bit in our lives, then we're going to have a lot more clarity and be happier and healthier. And again, I have a passion for this because, look, it's crazy out there. We have this emergency, really, in my view. We have to get cracking here. Perceiving, awakening, you know. So again, thanks again for watching. I'll make a lot more videos this year. I don't know, it's pretty wild out there. And for people who see my Facebook and so on, I try to have a sense of humor. It doesn't always come across in a text. Look, you know, there's serious things, and there's also time to laugh and stuff, but, you know, we have to get cracking on some of this really serious stuff, because, like, you know, the government and all those kind of agencies are not really helping very much in the awakening process. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you up in the next video.